Welcome everybody to one of two special indie showcases for this week. EGX and Tacticon both occurred last week, and I played a whole lot of demos as well as press key submissions. So for this video, we're going to be taking a look at EGX. All the games shown are either going to be demos or press submitted games. If you'd like me to take a look at your game for a future piece, please get in touch. And we're starting things off with Helvetii. This is a 2D action roguelike where it follows a very similar style of like a vanillaware style game. You play as one of three heroes who are trying to stop an evil person from, well, dooming the land. And to do that, we are going to hack and slash our way through procedurally generated areas. The areas themselves, once again, are stitched together from handmade rooms, and your job is to clear out all the enemies, move on to the next. The general look of the game is okay, but I did find that the character models didn't seem to really mesh, I think, in some cases with the backgrounds. But the main issue that I had with this one, what I'm hoping will be taken care of in the main game, or in the full version, is that combat felt very spongy. Enemies seem to take lots and lots of hits. Now, the footage you're seeing is with the game played on hard difficulty, but I heard from comments that even on normal, it still felt like they were taking a lot of damage. There's also one of those games where it can be very hard to read tells. Some enemies have like an instant attack, others have that kind of like awkward wind up, they're going to attack, maybe not, and then they do. And it can be very hard sometimes to tell, and you'll get smacked by the enemies. With the three characters, they kind of split the different moves and functionality between the three. The character that you're seeing on screen right now is the one who can parry. There's another character who can block, and so on. All in all, I think this one has some potential, but I really hope that we see a little bit more in terms of making the combat, I think, more impactful and faster in the finished version. We now turn to LunarLux. This is a demo for a Kickstarter game, and this one seems to combine kind of the Mega Man Battle Network style of gameplay with JRPG combat and progression. You play as a warrior hero, a police officer, who is going to stumble upon a massive conspiracy involving aliens invading the moon, and it's going to be up to us to save the day. What makes this game very interesting is the combat system, where you'll gain different passives that you can activate or you pull into your character, and they're randomly chosen each turn. So you can kind of figure out a way to determine how best to manipulate or boost your various skills. You can move around on the field, and you can also activate shields in order to block damage. This is one of those games where the combat is heavily defined by a press combat or an action-based combat system, where you must hit all the various QTEs in order to maximize damage or avoid it. My main problems with this one: the demo, I don't think, did a really good job of onboarding. For instance, I was playing with a gamepad and it was showing me keyboard and mouse controls. And the game didn't even give you the idea that you can move around on the field, because the opening tutorial only keeps you into one spot. And I'm definitely concerned about how slow or how much time it's going to take to get into fights. The levels or the fights that we fought during the demo were on the lengthier side, just simply by the fact we didn't have a lot of powers available. But this is definitely one that there are some interesting aspects here. If you like your RPGs with a heavy dose of that kind of action command style, then I would check this one out. But if you're not a huge fan of that, then this game may not be the best for you. We're now switching things up with Wavetale. This is a 3D platformer where we live in a world where what appears to be some kind of mysterious fog or evil is besieging the land. And after gaining the power to walk, surf, and kind of glide around on water, it's going to be up to us to save the day. The general moment-to-moment gameplay of this one feels really nice. It's definitely a joy to be skating along the water, bouncing and gliding, and kind of doing your own kind of hover or flutter jump as well. From the demo that we played, the basic structure seems to be you're looking to collect these various items in each point of interest, which you can then use to kind of activate a device or bring light back, which will then purify or secure the area, and then you move on to the next. Now, a few issues came up with this demo. The camera is a little bit weird. There is no lock-on, which makes fighting enemies kind of strange, and it can be a little frustrating in that respect. And the kind of moment-to-moment of this game, it's not bad, but I'm not sure how far they're going to go with these mechanics. It seemed like this is going to be more on the basic side of things. So for someone who is well versed in 3D platforming, you're probably not going to get a whole lot out of this one, but this does seem like this could be a fun one for newcomers or kind of average 3D platformer fans. And I'm still kind of curious to see where this one develops when it is released. And now we have another kind of platformer with Dros. Unlike our last game, and while this may look like a 3D platformer, this is actually more of a puzzle platforming style game. We play as this knight and the mysterious creature called a Dros, and we are trying to escape from this area. Dros is able to find hidden objects, discover hidden switches, fake platforms or invisible platforms, but cannot fight at all. While our knight friend can't jump, but is able to deal with the various enemies that are all around. Each level is a collection of puzzles that will involve you trying to get both characters around various obstacles, collecting MacGuffins, solving various puzzles, and so on and so forth. From the time we spent on the demo, it is an alright game. I am just wondering how far they're going to go in terms of puzzle and platforming complexity, as you're going to have to use both characters, and you'll have to make use of both the platforming and the puzzle solving in order to find or even get around everything. And from what we played inside the demo, the combat is just so-so. Platforming is of the kind of basic variety, although you don't get an easy to see shadow when you're jumping in the 3D space, and hopefully that will be made a little bit more visible in the finished version. So all in all, this game was interesting, but I would say that if you're not already a huge fan of puzzle platformers, I don't think Dros is going to change your mind. And now we turn to Terracotta. While the game store page describes this as an action-adventure game, I see this more as an adventure-action game. You play as a terracotta warrior who is trying to bring back or save the souls of his fellow warriors. And to do that, we are going to be doing a lot of puzzle solving. The puzzle design in this one is about shifting between two different kind of dimensions. You have the real world, and you have this kind of spirit world. In the spirit world, you move slower, and you're able to use, I believe, your key in order to set up shields, charge things to be used, etc. In the real world, things will of course move and try to attack you. Puzzle solving is all about trying to put yourself in a position to hit buttons, activate things, while protecting yourself from various enemies. Now, with that said, the controls for manipulating your key is a little bit weird, and definitely this is a game that you want to use the keyboard and mouse as opposed to a gamepad. You can draw on the ground using your mouse, but you can have to hit specific buttons or keys in order to extend or retract the line itself, and it can be just a little bit weird to control. The demo certainly introduced some interesting aspects and puzzles to solve, but I think it could have done a far better job in terms of explaining to the player what their actual goal was for each area. I don't know if there's going to be specific upgrades or collectibles to be found, but this was definitely an interesting game. And while it may not be for everybody, if you're looking for a different kind of action-adventure game, I would definitely check out the demo for Terracotta. We now turn to Astrea, Six-Sided Oracles. And for me, I believe this is going to be my best of show of EGX. This is a deck-building roguelike with some very unique twists for the genre. The first is that your deck includes or is made up of dice, as you can see along the bottom of the screen. Every dice comes as like a different kind of class or specialty. There's normal dice, lucky dice, risky dice, that kind of stuff. Every dice will have different faces that correspond to different things you can do with it if it rolls that face. Red values will cause corruption. If you corrupt an enemy, you will heal them and build up their overcharge meter, which will cause them to do something special. You can cast corruption on you. That will cause your corruption meter to build, that you can see above my dice at the bottom. At different thresholds, you unlock different powers, such as being able to re-roll dice, do damage. You can even shift or reverse the charge of a dice for free each turn. You only lose life if your corruption gauge fills all the way up, so that's 7 points. So what I really like about this game is that it is really great at handling multiple avenues of risk and reward. As you play, you'll be able to find dice that can alter other dice or gain passives that can do this. So the game itself is constantly about kind of mitigating the risk of taking very dangerous dice. As an example, one of the dice you can pick up, whenever it rolls to a top or its face, it will cause you to turn one other face on another dice to -5 or 5 corruption, which sounds bad until you realize that if you convert that face, you now have 5 damage purity ready and raring to go. Now this is one of those games that it is definitely on the meatier side in terms of learning elements and figuring out how best to play it. The store page promotes that there's going to be multiple characters with their own rules and their own abilities for how they manipulate dice. So this is definitely not for someone who is new to the whole deck building roguelike design. But if you're someone like me who's looking for like the next unique take on this formula, definitely check this one out. We now turn to a game that is definitely not as meaty or deep as our last game, and that is Funtasia. In this title, evil radioactive trash has landed on a happy planet, and in order to save the day, we are going to drive our car across the various landscapes trying to deal with the trash. The general look of this game I really like. It reminds me of like that kind of like 60s or 70s like biker magazines, as well as like 80s and 90s, that kind of like very raw aesthetic. The main thing about this game is that it is definitely on the, it may be a little too simplistic, I think, at least for someone like me. And it falls more, I think, along the lines of being an endless runner. You do get multiplayer as well. But the whole idea is you drive until you either run out of juice or you crash, use those resources to upgrade your car, repeat, get a little bit further, repeat again until you complete the whole map, and then move on to the next. I would love to see, I think, a little bit more depth with this kind of layout, because I think the game has a lot of charm in terms of its atmosphere, but if you're looking for something, again, on the very later side, and it does, again, have multiplayer, then I would say at least give this one a check, look at the demo, and see if you'll enjoy it. We now have Shrine's Legacy, and this is a 16-bit SNES-inspired RPG. Think of a game like Secret of Mana, Illusion of Gaia, Soul Blazer, that kind of category of game. We play as our hero here, who, when the evil demon lord has returned, it's up to us to collect the magical MacGuffins, go across the land, and save the day. The demo itself, I think, was a little bit on the slower side, definitely a lot of exposition, but the gameplay definitely hints at some interesting things going forward. You'll be able to equip different jewels, which will afford or give you unique passives. The game will always allow you to have a 2-player partner, and you can play this with multiplayer, which I think is a kind of a nice touch. With that said, I didn't really see too much new in terms of the basic gameplay systems. But if you are looking for a modern retro RPG, then I would at least give the demo a check. But with that said, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have a few more games for the EGX showcase. If you're interested in my thoughts on design, then check out my game design books. For entry-level students, we have 20 Essential Games to Study, and then the Game Design Deep Dive series that takes an extensive look at different genres, with more coming soon. We now have Baladins. This is a 1 to 4 player kind of, I guess, tabletop-ish inspired RPG adventure. You play as up to 4 people, or 4 Baladins, who are trying to make life better for everyone. And to do that, we are going to explore the kingdom, go on quests, and interact with all the strange and unusual inhabitants of the world. This game is very similar to that of, say, a Fallen London or Sunless Sky and so on, in that it is entirely stat-driven. This is not a game about who can attack the fastest. There's no direct engagement. Instead, every character has different values of stats you can see in the upper left-hand corner. As you complete tasks or do jobs, you'll gain abilities, or you'll gain more points in those respective stats, which in turn will give you a greater chance of success when there are events that go along with it. You have a certain number of action points and movement points you can do each turn. And your general goal is that you're trying to achieve some kind of objective before something bad happens to the kingdom. But the entire game is played very tongue-in-cheek, very charming. I love the aesthetics of this game as well as its art style. My only real concern is that I'm not quite sure if one person can actually complete these quests or not. And I definitely want to throw that to the developer if they're watching this part right now. But this could certainly be a lot of fun. You can get a group of people together for it. The game promotes hour or less sessions with a lot of replayability, new content, missions, and so on that unlock as you play. So this is definitely a game I would suggest anyone who has friends and you're looking for another multiplayer game to play to check this one out. For our last game, we have Railroads and Catacombs, a game that combines the Lovecraftian horror of Darkest Dungeon with that of a deck builder of a Slay the Spire variety. How this game works is that you, aboard your train, are going to travel around dealing with Lovecraftian monsters. When you pick your kind of archetypes at the beginning, this determines the card actions or modifiers that you can attach to your cards. So one class gives you more abilities to do card draw. Another one could give you armor or getting a repose if you are attacked when you have armor up. Your basic cards, I believe, are going to be standard each time, but being able to mix and match the modifiers is an interesting take. Also, unlike other games, every point of interest, or every time you go into combat, doesn't always have the same objective. Some will have you kill the champion, some will make you have to do enough damage, etc, etc. And your general goal is to explore an area, collect as many resources as you can before you run out of supplies or the ability to keep exploring. Go fight the big bad. If you win, you move on to the next area. The game promotes a lot of persistent elements, including kind of a progressive difficulty, kind of being able to upgrade your train and gain more things like that. With that said, the main issue that I have with this game is that the UI is very hard to follow. There's a lot of things going on that I was having a hard time following. Why certain enemies were hitting me? What kind of damage was I doing? Why did an enemy just blow up all of a sudden when I didn't even attack them? And the game could do a better job of explaining or showing this stuff off on the UI itself. Now, with that said, if you're not entirely tired of deck building roguelikes, I would at least give this one a check if you are a fan. But this one, again, much like our previous example for our video, If you're not into the genre, then I do not think this is a great place to start, as it's definitely aiming to be, I think, a little bit more advanced in that respect. But that is going to do it for EGX 2022. Thank you so much for watching. You'll find links to all the games down below, and tune in real soon for the Tacticon Festival Showcase as well. Do the liking, subscribing, and commenting. Check out the Discord and Patreon, and come back for daily discussions on game design here, and on game wisdom, where he's in the art and science of games.